Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on the 12 enemies of small business success and how to defeat them. I'm Peter Talion, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. I'll be your host today, and our presenter is Cliff Ennico. More on Cliff in just a moment. First, some brief information on SCORE. SCORE is a nonprofit national partner of the Small Business Administration. We offer three primary value-added services to small business owners. Number one, free one-on-one counseling. Number two, educational workshops and webinars. And number three, extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject matter experts at your disposal. Our next live webinar is Tuesday, March 5th at noon. The topic is Canva, more tips and tricks to help your marketing with bud drawing presenting. Look for the specifics on fairfieldcounty.score.org. We also have a large number of recorded webinars on our website that cover a wide range of business topics. These can be viewed at any time by clicking on On-Demand Webinars. Some useful information about today's events. Cliff will be taking Q&A throughout the presentation. If you have a question, either use the Q&A button at the bottom or the chat function at the bottom of the screen. Our webinar will end sharply at 1 o'clock to respect your time. The session is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available at fairfieldcounty.score.org within the next day or so. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Cliff Ennico. Cliff is a nationally recognized authority on small business, legal and tax issues, and is best known as the former host of Money Hunt, the PBS television series for entrepreneurs. He is the author of 16 books, including the Crowdfunding Handbook, Raise Money for Your Small Business or Startup with Equity Funding Portals, and he judges business plans and elevator pitch competitions nationwide. Cliff is an attorney and small business consultant based in Fairfield, Connecticut. He has launched thousands of businesses in his 43-year career. It's now a great pleasure to welcome Cliff back to a SCORE webinar. Please go ahead, Cliff.
Hey, thanks, Peter, for that wonderful introduction. And thanks to everybody for spending a part of your day, your busy day with an attorney, because that's basically what I am here in Fairfield, Connecticut. And we're going to be talking today about a topic that's very dear to my heart. It's actually, this is a 1-hour version of a book that I wrote a few years ago called Small Business Survival Guide, which is available, in print wherever books are sold. You'll see a picture of it before this show is done. First of all, couple of little disclaimers here, and that is we are going to get into a couple of legal and tax things on this program today. There's a very big difference between giving out legal information and giving out legal advice. I mean, legal information is just, here's what the law is all about. You should be aware of it. Legal advice is now, Peter, here's what you should do, and Bob, here's why you should do something different. One-on-one advice is something I really cannot do on this program. I'll definitely do the best I can to answer your questions, but I'm not in a position to specifically answer legal and tax questions. That is something you need to discuss with your lawyer or your accountant. So, enemies. Okay, tough topic to talk about these days, but as we live in a growingly polarized world, the concept of enemies is not as silly as it might have been maybe a dozen or so years ago. People have enemies. When you are starting a business or when you start some kind of an entrepreneurial venture, not everybody is going to love you. There are some people who are going to hate your guts, and there are some people who want to kill you. You are an irritant. When you are an entrepreneur, you are disturbing the status quo, and there are people who will not like that. And this program is going to be partly a guide to identifying who these people are and developing strategies for defeating them. When you're starting a business, your focus is on building the business, on marketing and selling. The focus is all on offense, but you have to find some time in your busy day to deal with defensive strategies. As any football coach will tell you, you can't win games with just on offense. You also have to have a good defense as well. And that's what this program is all going to be about, defensive strategies. So who are the 12 worst enemies of your growing business? Well, I'm dividing this into two categories, the enemies without and the enemies within. There are 6 of each. The enemies without are people who live outside of your organization. The enemies within are people who live inside your organization, even if your organization is just you. So let's begin by talking about the most obvious enemy, which is competitors. Every business has competitors. Every once in a while I'll deal with a startup, company, or a score person will call me, and I get to the whole topic of competition, and the response is, "Oh, Cliff, we have no competition. We're cutting edge. We're AI driven. We're not. There's nothing like us out there." And whenever somebody says that, I bite my lip a little bit, because you're not lying to me. You're lying to yourself. You haven't done your homework as well as you should. Every business has competition. It's just that some competitors are more visible than others. And it's very easy to be confused by this. You can look around and say, there are no visible competitors out there. But I'll bet you there are some less visible competitors out there. You really have to be a little neurotic when you're looking for competitors. I've always believed insecurity is one of the big factors in an entrepreneur's success. Successful entrepreneurs are, by and large, neurotic people. These are not, when we have an image of entrepreneurs, we have visions of these macho type A people who are always, on top of things, and they're always sure of themselves. They have, big egos and whatnot. And a lot of them have big egos, but in truth, the most successful people I've ever worked with are neurotic. They take nothing for granted. They look under every rock looking for problems. And that's part of the entrepreneurial life. There are competitors out there. It's just that some of them are not very visible to you. There are four types of competitors. And I want to talk to the way I normally do this when I teach a live class is with a 2x2 matrix. Picture a box with a box with four boxes within it, two on the top, two on the bottom. Okay. On the top, I want you to write the words direct and indirect. And on the side, either one, I want you to write today or tomorrow. Okay. All four competitive types of competitors, all the competitors you will ever encounter in business are in one of these four boxes. They're either direct today, indirect today, direct tomorrow, or indirect tomorrow. And let's talk about these people and who they are. The direct today competitor is the person who's the most visible. These are the ones that you will see. If you do any kind of competitive research at all, you'll find these folks. These are the people who are out there, they're in the market already, and they're doing exactly the same thing that you're doing. So if I am if I'm looking to open a pizza parlor on Black Rock Turnpike in my hometown of Fairfield, that's a local commercial strip, all the six pizza parlors that are already out there selling pizza are my direct today competitors. They're doing the exact same thing that I'm doing, and they're in the marketplace today. But competitors do not have to be direct. They can be indirect as well. So if I'm looking to open up a pizza parlor on Black Rock Turnpike, the six pizza parlors that are out there are my direct competitors, but the Chinese takeout place across the street or the Indian tandoori joint down the street, those are my indirect competitors. Now, their menus don't look anything at all like mine. They are not doing pizza, although Indian naan bread sometimes comes pretty close. But if you're in the mood for a quick lunch, you can do a slice of pizza or an egg roll. You have that choice. So to some extent, these people, even though they don't look anything like me, are my indirect competitors because they're targeting the same markets and the same, needs and wants, the same fears and passions that I'm trying to address. That's the difference between a direct and an indirect competitor. See, competitors are not always the people that are doing the same thing that you are. Competitors are people who are targeting the same markets and the same needs and wants that you are trying to address with your customers. It's the people that are pursuing the same customers, whether or not they look the same as you do. So, like I said, that Indian joint or that Chinese takeout joint could very well be a competitor to a pizza parlor. Okay. So, but we don't have to, we can't just look at direct and indirect. We also have to look at timing. There are today competitors and there are tomorrow competitors. Now, today competitors are people who are in the marketplace today. They're already out there doing whatever they're doing. So if I'm looking to open up a pizza parlor on Black Rock Turnpike, the six pizza parlors that are already there are my today competitors. But you also have to look at tomorrow competitors. These are people who are not in your marketplace today, but they could get into your marketplace relatively quickly. And if they did, they would wipe you out because they have economies of scale. They're operating at a different level than you are. We're not just worried here about everybody. If one of you were to raise your hand in the chat room and say, "Hey, Cliff, I'm thinking of opening up a pizza parlor on Black Rock Turnpike in the next few months," yes, you are a tomorrow competitor, but I'm not really worried about you. You're a mom and pop. You're just like me. I've been out there. I've already done my marketing. I've already got a lot of customers. I'm not really worried about you too much. You're going to have to work hard to get to the level that I am today. Bring it on. Is going to be my attitude. But let's say that you are Sbarro or Olive Garden, or picture your favorite Italian chain restaurant. Okay, let's say that I have a pizza parlor on Black Rock Turnpike, and I find out that an Olive Garden is going to open up down the street. Now, that's a horse of a different color. They're much bigger than I am. They have a full liquor license. They offer a wide variety of food. They have hundreds of seats, whereas I can only seat a few people for lunch. They are a very formidable competitor. They are probably going to knock me out of business. Pizzeria Uno or someplace like that. That's when we're talking about tomorrow competitors, we're really talking about people that are much bigger than we are. So, franchises also, by the way, fall into this category. I know they are mom and pop businesses. The local franchisees are mom and pop people, but they have a national operating budget. They have national brand recognition. When you see a Burger King sign or a McDonald's sign, you know exactly the experience that you're going to get. You don't have to explain who you are. So, franchises can be very formidable competitors as well because of their advertising budgets and their name recognition. You don't have the budget to take out TV ads. Burger King and McDonald's do. So let's talk about these. So when we're talking about the direct tomorrow competitor, we're talking about, big box retailers, franchises, that kind of thing. But what about the indirect tomorrow competitor, that fourth box at the very bottom right hand of we call it a 2x2 matrix. Your 2 boxes up, 2 boxes down. This is the one in the bottom right hand corner. The indirect competitors of the future. Are we getting really philosophical here? The answer is no. These people are sometimes your most formidable competitors. I will personally share with you that I shut down a company that I ran for 13 years because I looked in this box and I didn't like what I was seeing there. I saw a lot of things happening that were going to wipe me out of business. So I got out of the marketplace. I actually sold my business to somebody else before this thing came down and crushed me. Sometimes a competitor is not a who, it's a what. And technology, AI, anything that's going to make your product or service obsolete is in this fourth box, the indirect competitor of tomorrow. And you have to spend at least a little time thinking about these people. I personally, as a lawyer, I am paranoid about AI right now and what AI is going to do in our profession. I draft contracts for a living. Well, guess what? ChatGPT can do that. And sometimes it does a pretty good job of basic legal contracts. I don't know if I'm going to be doing that work for my clients 3 to 5 years from now. I got to look at this and see what's going on. Back in the early 90s, I had a publishing firm. I was publishing books and audio cassette programs, and the internet came down in the early 90s. And that's the thing that made me sell my company to someone else. I saw that people were not going to be reading 200-page books on how to interview for a job. They were going to be looking for advice online. They were going to be looking for online tutorials and things like that. And I just wasn't equipped to bring my business into the 21st century. So that's why I sold my company out to somebody else. Sometimes your worst competitors are not a who, but a what. Always at least spend some time thinking, am I going to be relevant 5, 10 years from now? Is this business still going to be around in 5 or 10 years? So these are, yeah. So these are the things you have to think about when you're dealing about competitors. I actually have a whole course on competitors. If you go to youtube.com, I actually have 52 YouTube 1-hour YouTube videos up on YouTube for people just like you who are looking to start businesses or grow businesses. I've got view videos on just about every topic you can imagine. A lot of them are recordings of sessions like this. And I do have a thing on finding your competition. If you search for if you go to youtube.com and search for Cliff Ennico, just like my name appears here, you'll see all 52 of my videos. If you search for Cliff Ennico competition or Cliff Ennico starting your own business, I have 6 1-hour videos on starting your own video, and the competition stuff is in part 3, if you're interested in that. So if you search for Cliff Ennico part 3, you'll probably get a hold of that particular video that deals specifically with competition. Okay, but that's only enemy number one. I know we spent a lot of time on that one, but that's one that you have to deal with when you're in business for yourself. Creditors, people you owe money to, people that you have injured who have cases against you. There are two types of creditors. There are, financial creditors like banks, venture capital firms, angel investors and people like that. And there are judgment creditors, people that you have injured in your business and who are now a plaintiff in a lawsuit. You have to develop strategies for protecting your assets against them. As with competition, I also have a 1 hour video on YouTube on how to deal with creditors. It's actually called Keeping Lawsuits at Bay. So if you go to youtube.com and search for Cliff Ennico lawsuits, you'll find this one. There are basically 5 strategies for keeping lawsuits at bay and for keeping judgment creditors out of your hair. Really quickly, they are: number one, forming corporations and LLCs. If you do not have a corporation or an LLC, you are totally naked. All of your personal assets are liable to attack by creditors. By creating a corporation or LLC, you are putting a wall up between your business assets, the stuff that you use in your business, and your personal assets, your house, your cars, your kids' college tuition fund, your 401k from a former employer. All of that stuff is behind the wall. If you have a corporation or an LLC, a plaintiff can still get to your business assets. That's why you have to have insurance on those things. But your personal assets are behind the wall and are protected from attack. It's a very, very good thing to do. Obviously, you'll need the help of an attorney or a LegalZoom, one of the online services, to set up a corporation or LLC. Secondly, is insurance. Get as much insurance as you possibly can on all your business assets. Thirdly, transferring assets into your spouse's name. This is something I don't always recommend to my clients, but it's something that you have to consider if you do have a spouse and that spouse is not going to be involved in the business with you. Transferring assets into his or her name might well protect those specific assets against an attack from a business creditor. But the thing you have to be careful about here is that when you do this, when you transfer these assets into your spouse's name, you are making a legal transfer that the courts will not acknowledge. So if you ever get divorced down the road, you will not only be without a spouse, you will be without a house as well. If you put half of your house into your spouse's name, the courts will acknowledge that transfer and you will be homeless. I will see you on I-95 with a sign saying we'll do whatever for food, and I do not want to see any of my clients in that situation. What happens if you don't have a spouse, by the way? This is a question that often comes up. The short answer is you can still do this. You can transfer a title to another family member, but be sure, and this is very important, make sure that the other person changes their will so that when they die, which they ultimately will, we all will, that asset will come back to you and will not go through the general probate process. There is a provision, it's called a specific bequest provision, that you can put into a will where a specific asset will be earmarked for a specific person and will not go to all of the person's heirs. Because I will tell you, I had a horrible situation when I first started practicing in Connecticut about 30 years ago, when I first moved up here. I had a client, he was a single gentleman. He had never married, did very well on Wall Street, had a beautiful home in Westport, valued at, a couple of $1 million, no mortgage. He paid cash for it. He owned it outright, and he was thinking of buying a franchise. And he was and he wanted to buy this franchise, and he was afraid, he didn't want the asset to be attacked by the franchisor in case things didn't go well. So he wasn't married, he was single, but he had a mom who doted on him, who loved him, who was 88 years old. So what he did was he transferred title to the house into mom's name. And unfortunately, mom did not change her will. So what happened? A couple of years later, she passed on. And because there was no specific bequest provision in the will, the house went into the general estate. This fellow had 5 brothers and sisters, and they did not get along very well. So when mom died, all of a sudden, he ended up owning 1/6 of the house that he used to own free and clear. And it took him almost 12 years to buy out all of his brothers and sisters and get title back to the house that he once owned free and clear. That's my horror story. So if you're going to transfer assets to somebody other than a spouse, make sure that the other person changes their will so that if when they do pass away, it comes back to you. Okay, so that's pretty much dealing with creditors. There are strategies such as trusts. This is something you want to talk to an attorney about at some point. Whenever you create a trust, however, you have to be very clear you're parting company with that asset. In order for that trust to be enforceable and protect you against creditors, you cannot, set up the trust and then continue owning and possessing the object. You have to put it into the trust, and that trust has to be managed by an independent trustee, somebody you do not control. So if you're going to do this, keep in mind that you're parting with the asset at that point in time. And there are sometimes tax advantages to doing this, by the way. But you will not, that asset is no longer yours. It now belongs technically to the trustee in trust until, it gets distributed to whoever the trust beneficiaries are. Okay, enemy number 3, copycats. People who steal your ideas. These days, I'm not dealing with too many brick and mortar companies these days. I'm not representing a whole lot of retail stores and stuff like that. People aren't doing those anymore because they're simply too expensive. These days, what I represent are companies that are dealing with technology in various ways, software companies, media companies, where the assets are all in people's brains. Everything these days is intangible assets, and very often your intellectual property, your patents, your trademarks, your company name, may be the most valuable assets you have. Okay. You have to protect these things. And there are different ways of protecting them depending on what it is. I actually have a couple of YouTube videos on YouTube. See, basically, each one of these slides, each one of these 12 enemies is a YouTube video that I have on YouTube that's 1 hour, a little more, sometimes a little bit longer than an hour, between an hour and 15 minutes, usually 60 to 75 minutes. These are well worth your time, and they're absolutely free. I know I don't make a penny off of any of these. They're just a way of promoting myself and also helping you figure out, how to figure out the legal universe. Copyrights and trademarks are very different things. They are protected in different ways. I have a video, for example, on trademark basics. If you go and search for Cliff Ennico trademarks on youtube.com, you'll get right to it. Likewise, I have a program on copyright basics. If you search for Cliff Ennico copyrights, you'll get a hold of that one. Unfortunately, I don't have anything on patents. I don't do any patent work for my clients, but there are some excellent things out there on basic patent law. If you're an inventor, for example, I would also refer you also to the Inventors Association of Connecticut. It's called IACT. This is an organization that meets once a month, usually in Fairfield County, sometimes in New Haven County, but they're all inventors. They're technology entrepreneurs, and there are a lot of patent lawyers and patent professionals who are members of that organization. So that's one way. If you're an inventor, that's one good way to find out about patents. Trade secrets. A lot of things cannot be protected via the patent, trademark, and copyright system. So, for example, if you have a killer recipe for borscht, and you're setting up a Russian-themed restaurant, which is based around this killer recipe for borscht, recipes cannot be copyrighted. So what you're going to have to do, the only way to protect that is to keep it secret and make sure you don't blab about it to the wrong kinds of people. Make sure that your employees don't find out what all of that is. And someone actually pointed out that borscht is Ukrainian. I apologize profusely for that. Although Vladimir Putin might disagree with me, but who cares about him anyway? Yes, I stand corrected. Borscht is Ukrainian, absolutely. Okay. Okay, next, enemy number 4, crooks, flakes, frauds, and time. These are thieves. These are people who steal from you. People who steal your money or your time. I mean, obviously, the most common types of thief is the larceny, the shoplifter. If you have a retail store, sooner or later someone's going to rip you off. They're going to pretend to be looking around. The next thing you know, they're grabbing stuff and they're running down the street. You have to have strategies in place to protect against that kind of thing. Ideas and trade secrets. Keeping your trade secrets confidential, making sure that they don't fall into the wrong hands. I understand that the formula for Coca-Cola, which is a trade secret, is kept in a vault in the corporate headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. Only 2 or 3 executives have access to that safe, and they must sign non-disclosure agreements from hell, saying that basically their lives will be over if they ever let the secret of the Coca-Cola formula leak out into the public domain. You have to be very careful about your trade secrets, because there really is no way to effectively protect them. And even if there are, I mean, I know people, for example, who don't copyright what they do because they don't want to put it on the public record. They're afraid that people in China or North Korea or wherever will take advantage of that. Sometimes, even though something is copyrightable, you don't do it because you want to protect its confidentiality. Dealing with fraud, fraudsters are very clever these days. I mean, you get these emails and text messages like I do, offering me all kinds of wonderful things, and they're not as obvious as they used to be. Some of them are damn good. It's getting harder and harder now to protect yourself against these kinds of things, especially now with AI. I had one the other day where someone called up that was pretending to be my cousin, and she sounded exactly like my cousin. But she said things that I know my cousin would never say in a million years. So I was awake to this, but some of these are getting very, very good. And AI is going to make them good. If you've ever seen a deep fake online, you know how good some of this stuff is getting. You have to be constantly constantly on your guard. Conducting due diligence whenever you're thinking about doing business and somebody else, check them out. If it's an important relationship, hire a private investigator to look into this person's background and see, have they been arrested? Have they served time in prison? What's their credit? Have they ever been subject to bankruptcy before? And the most insidious step of all is the time vampire. Why? Because time vampires almost always tend to be very nice people, and it's very hard to say no to them. If you serve on the board of a nonprofit organization, for example, you know what a time vampire is. It's someone who just takes up all the time and sucks all the time out of your life and doesn't pay you anything for your time. I have to be very, very vigilant against these people. There are a lot of people who need, legal services, complicated legal services, but who don't have the money to pay for them. And unfortunately, much as I try to do what I can for these people, I cannot spend a significant amount of my time engaging in activities that don't generate income. So and neither do you. So, be very careful about time vampires, and find ways, nice ways to say no to them, but find ways to say no to them. And if they are turning out to be taking up too much of your life, get rid of them. Resign from the board if that is your situation. Again, time vampires are again, they're insidious because they're so nice. And that's how, they end up stealing your time, because it's very hard to say no to these people. Okay, enemy number 5, suppliers, customers, and professionals, including, yes, lawyers. I don't exclude my profession from this. Now, these are the people who help you make your business successful. If you don't have suppliers or customers, well, geez Louise, you don't have much of a business at all. I would say that what you have there is a hobby. No, you have to be good to your customers. Well, yeah, but what happens when you're too good to your customers? They take advantage. They want everything for nothing. They want you to, I do a lot of corporate filings for my clients, and the first thing they do is, Cliff, just put it on your credit card. I'll reimburse you when you send me my invoice. Now, there are some people I will do that with if they're people that I've worked with for years and years. But if I don't know who you are, I am not going to do that. I'm not going to put $50, a $50 filing fee on my credit card, and then find out that, you disappear and you don't pay me. That puts me in a very awkward spot. I'm not going to challenge my credit card bills. I'm not going to, file a contest with the credit card issuer for something like that. I'm not going to do it. Sooner or later, they drop you if you do that too much. So I'm not so you have to be very careful. Your customers are your what make your business go, but they can be enemies, especially if you're too nice to them. And the same with suppliers. If you're nice to your suppliers, they'll try to twist your arm to make you pay too much for stuff that you could probably get online for half the price. Professionals. Let's put it this way. I try to be very careful when I bill my clients. I always send detailed bills out to clients showing them exactly what I do. Never trust a lawyer who sends you a bill for value received $5,000. Ask them for a detailed bill. See exactly what they did to get to that 5,000. And if you see something you don't like or you disagree with, raise your hand, raise a question. There are too many lawyers in society today. I agree with that. There are too many lawyers in society. So those of you who've had economics or a basic economics course in your life, you studied supply and demand curves. What happens in an economy where there are too many suppliers and not enough buyers? Well, the answer is prices should come down. Okay. So in a market where there are too many lawyers, shop around. Don't be afraid to talk price with attorneys. Believe me, I like it when a client tells me, "Hey, Cliff, just to let you know, I mean, I'd love to work with you, but I've only got a budget of $500. What will that buy me?" That helps me because that helps me avoid wasting my time developing this big complicated strategy and then finding out the client can't pay for it. If you tell me what your limits are, I will help you work within your limits so that neither of us have a surprise. Any professional, lawyer, accountant, insurance person who sends you a bill that you are not expecting is someone who should not be trusted. They should be able to deal with you. Dealing with deadbeats, people who owe you money, you have to be utterly ruthless about this. I have another YouTube video. It's called Dealing with Deadbeats. If you go to YouTube, search for Cliff Ennico Deadbeats, you'll get right to it, where I talk about different strategies for dealing with people who owe you money. But the key thing is stop working. If you see a client is starting to fall behind on their payments, don't make that hole any deeper by continuing to perform services and running up a tab. Stop what you're doing, call the client, make it a friendly call. I'm not saying you should snarl at them, but just say, "Hey, look, it looks to me like you're having a little bit of trouble paying this bill. Is there something we should talk about here? I'm happy to work with you, but obviously I'm not a charity. I don't work for nothing here. So I need to get paid here. What's going on?" Find strategies for dealing with people, and again, do not tolerate clients who owe you money. I have learned over the years that big accounts receivable issues almost always start out as small ones that get out of hand. So don't whenever you find yourself in a hole, the first step is stop digging. Don't make that hole any deeper than it is today. Okay, enemy number 6, we're halfway through. This is the last of the enemies without, and that is the government, the biggest partner of every small business, dealing with sales and estate, income taxes, complying with regulations without disrupting your profit margins, getting involved in politics. I mean, it very well may be that if you're in a business where government regulations are highly important, you may want to become part of the system, become a lobbyist, become run for local office, if that is if that's relevant to your business, whether you like it or not. I mean, no one's too fond of the political system these days. I think that's a statement I can make. But as we used to say in the 1960s, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Learn what the taxes are, learn about government regulations. The government changes regulations all the time, and sometimes these things can hurt you. And I'll give you a very good example. A lot of you are not aware of this, but on January 1 of this year, a new law went into effect. It's a federal law. It's called the Corporate Transparency Act of 2021. It just became effective on January 1. And this law now requires all corporations and LLCs in the United States, regardless of size, to file a report with the U.S. Department of Treasury stating who their beneficial owners are. There is no small business exemption for this. Even a one-person LLC engaged in consulting activities has got to file this report with the Treasury Department. If you formed your LLC or corporation before January 1 of this year, you have until December 31st of this year to file the report. If you have formed an LLC or corporation after January 1 of this year, you only have 90 days to file the report, or else there are penalties of $500 a day for each day that you are late filing this report. Now, I know this is going to hit a lot of you as a new thing. I'm going to see a lot of things in the chat room. You should know that I will be doing a program for SCORE next month, March 26th, on this exact topic. It's called the Corporate Transparency Act. It hasn't been posted yet, but keep your eye open on it. If it's something that affects you, listen to my program and I'll tell you exactly what you have to do to comply. If you have formed an LLC in January or February, and you're subject to the 90-day filing requirement, talk to your lawyer, talk to your accountant, and make sure that that thing gets filed within the 90-day time frame. This is an example of the way that government can sometimes be an enemy. Okay, so those are the enemies without. Let's now talk about the enemies within. These are the people who are within your organization, who are close to you, who may potentially become enemies, sometimes unwillingly. They become enemies, but they create stress in your life. Spouses and ex-spouses. Sure, your spouse has no interest in your business until he or she serves you with divorce papers. You should be aware that Connecticut and New York are both what they call equitable distribution states. It used to be that whenever a couple got divorced, the courts would look at who had title to the various assets. So if the husband had the title to the asset, he got it. If the wife had title to the asset, she got it. That is no longer the law. The courts nowadays have very broad discretion to look at the entire picture of what a marriage is financially worth and assign assets to each spouse as the judge feels is equitable. And that's why they call it equitable distribution. So if you are the 100% breadwinner in your family, your spouse is, raising kids, they're not involved in any aspect of your business at all, they don't have any income, you totally support them, and you get divorced, your ownership interest in your company is going to be the biggest asset in your marital estate. And chances are very good that the court will allocate a significant percentage of that, maybe half, to your divorced spouse. And you will have to pay them, distributions as part of your ongoing, spousal or child support. So, at least have a strategy in mind for dealing with divorce if it ever, God forbid, happens, with you, because when this happens, you are now in partnership with your ex-spouse. And if the divorce was not an agreeable one, if it was a hostile divorce, you are now literally in bed with the enemy. At this point, someone owns a significant chunk of your business and has power to tell you what to do, and they are a hostile party. So just try to avoid that as much as you can. There are strategies for dealing with that, which a good attorney can help you with. Okay, business partners. Nothing, and I mean nothing, burns your breakfast like a partner who was playing games behind your back or even sometimes right in your face. I mean, I've been in partnerships with people who were not nice people, and it turned out to me. Here's the thing. First of all, the worst reason for hiring a partner, for bringing on a partner, is because you like somebody. The fact that two people like each other does not necessarily make them good partners. In fact, quite the opposite. It may create issues down the road. When you are in partnership with someone and you see them doing something that they shouldn't be doing, you have to be ruthless about stopping that. You may have to call that person a jackass or an a-hole or something like that. And it's very difficult to do that with a spouse or a close friend. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you shouldn't do business with your spouse. I mean, I could give a whole hour presentation for SCORE on that, and maybe someday I will. Um, but the thing is, a partner is not somebody you necessarily like. A partner is someone who complements you. Number one, they are strong where you are weak. They are weak where you are strong. Okay, and who communicates well. Okay, I've always found, and I've dealt with literally hundreds of partnerships in my career. The key to a successful partnership is that the partners must complement each other, and they must recognize that they complement each other. They must know their own strengths and weaknesses and be very cynical about that. I was in partnership with years for the person who was not a friend. We did not socialize, at all, hardly. Our wives didn't even know each other. Um, you know, and we didn't dislike each other either. It's just that he was very strong in one area, I was very strong in another area, and we would have arguments all the time. We'd have discussion. I would be stepping on his stuff all the time, he'd be stepping on mine. But at the end of the day, if it really came down to a 50-50 thing, if it was such an area where I was strong, he would defer to me. If it was an area where he was strong, I would defer to him. And that is the key to the relationship. You have to respect that the other person sometimes knows things that you don't know. And if it really comes down to a 50-50, coin toss, you should let the other person go that way if it is an area within his strength. The key here is that both partners, the classic example is Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. I mean, those two people were partners for 60 years, just about, in Berkshire Hathaway. And I don't know if they were, they obviously, I think they were close friends. Obviously, when you work that closely with anyone, I think it's difficult to avoid becoming friends with them. But that's not what made the partnership work. What made the partnership work is that they respected each other's strengths and weaknesses, which is what made them a very strong partnership. There are some things you can do in mind, and if things don't work out, there has to be an exit strategy where you can get rid of the partner without having to pay them, alimony for the next 10 to 15 years. You definitely want to have a strong agreement. It's called a buy-sell agreement. This is an agreement that says what happens if we don't get along, who's going to buy out who, what's the purchase price going to be. There's a whole art to drafting these agreements. I do them for my clients all the time. Learn a little bit about the various strategies for buying out a partner, because once someone becomes your partner, the only way that you can get rid of them legally is to buy them out for a price that they are willing to accept. Okay, and that has to be spelled out. You have to have a prenup agreement with this person. Painful although it is to negotiate one of these things, you have to have an agreement in place that says what happens if we do not get along. Okay, employees and contractors. Okay, employees are expensive and they have rights, but your business cannot function without them. If you're too good to your employees, what happens? They take advantage. They show up drunk. They don't show up at all. You find yourself spending your whole day making smoothies when your whole job is to just to grow the business, the smoothie business. There's an old saying: you should work on your business, never in your business. Good employees, at some point, a business grows to the point where the founders cannot run everything anymore. You have to hire people to run the business every day, and you have to make sure you hire very good ones. How to fire an employee without getting sued for wrongful termination or, God forbid, discrimination or something like that. Independent contractors. One of the biggest legal mistakes, in fact, probably the biggest one, I think, that a lot of small businesses make is that they confuse independent contractors and employees. The two things are very different. There is no such thing as a contract employee. No matter what you have read on the internet, whenever somebody is working for you, they're either a partner, an employee, or an independent contractor, and you got to know the differences between those three things. An employee is someone you direct and control. Okay, and it doesn't matter that they only work 10 or 15 or 20 hours a week. If you have the ability to tell them what to do and drag them around by the nose, even during that limited period of time, they are an employee. Here's my example. Okay, let's say that we have a business. Let's say we sell stuff online. We're an eBay or an Amazon seller. We sell stuff at retail online. Um, okay. Here's if you have the ability to do this to me. Hey, Cliff, stop what you're doing. We just got a big order. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I really want to get this stuff packed and shipped out at the UPS store before close of business today. Stop what you're doing. Help me pack these boxes and help me load up the truck. As soon as I leave for the UPS store, you can go back and do whatever it was you were doing before. If you have the ability to take me from one project to another like that, and I have to go along with you, that's an employment relationship. No matter how, you know, no matter how little I work for you, there are such things as part-time employees. An independent contractor is someone who determines their own schedule. That's the big thing. So take me, for example. Now, I'm an attorney. At any given time, I'm working for 20, 30 clients. Let's say you need me to do something for you. You can certainly give me a deadline. You can say, hey, Cliff, I need this by Friday because I'm meeting with the person and I want to have your draft by then. You can certainly do that. And if I respect our relationship, I will make sure that I meet that deadline. But what you cannot do is you can't say, hey, Cliff, stop this program, stop this score program right now. I need you to do something. I need it in an hour. I need it right away. I want you to stop doing that. And I need you to do this thing for me. You cannot do that to me because I am not your employee. I'm an independent contractor and I have the ability to say no. I'll do it in a nice way. I'll say, look, I'm happy to do it, but it's got to wait until tomorrow because I have a full plate today. That's what makes me an independent contractor more than anything else. Um, you know, um, so anyway, so that's the thing. Well, yeah. To the person who sent me an email, I love emails like this. He says, "How much do you charge?" I love emails. I love chat, text messages, and emails like that. How much do you charge? That I love. I love, and I will give you that answer at the end of the program. But let me finish the. I want to get through all the 12 enemies here too because we're pretty close here. Family and friends. Okay. The trick to doing business with families and friends is don't treat them like friends and family. Treat them as if they were total strangers. Treat them as if they were somebody like me, who, you don't know from Adam. What kind of paperwork would you want with me if I was going to be investing, say, in your business? You'd want some pretty good paperwork there. And the fact that it's Uncle Joe shouldn't make any difference. You should ask for the same paperwork from Uncle Joe that you would do from a total stranger like me. Because here's how family and friends can become enemies. Let's say, for example, that you start a business and Uncle Joe gives you $50,000 to start your business. You should be aware there is no such thing as giving somebody money to start a business. Well, there is, but it has to be very specifically documented with something called a deed of gift, which I guarantee none of you have ever heard of before. Nobody gives you money. They are either making a loan to your business or they are making an investment in your business. If they are making a loan, they expect to be paid back with interest. If they're making an investment, they're buying a piece of your company and they're getting shares. They're getting a percentage of all the future profits and losses of your business. Is what's happening. It's either way, one or the other. And what happens when that is not clear? Well, then the person, Uncle Joe, can basically decide down the road whether it was a loan or an investment. So let's say your business comes along, it takes off, it becomes a bottle rocket, it becomes hugely successful. You got the next AI, AI solution or something like that, and it's becoming almost to the point where it's going to be a public company someday. That's when Uncle Joe is going to, and you want to pay Uncle Joe back his $50,000, maybe give him 60,000. That's when Uncle Joe is going to come out and say, well, wait a minute, oh, that wasn't a loan, Cliff. That was an investment. That was for 10% of your company. And by the way, I never got my stock certificate. Please, would you send that to me for 10% of your company? He's going to say now that he's an owner because what's the old saying? Success has 1,000 fathers. Failure is an orphan, right? Well, let's say your business does not do well. Let's say it crashes and burns, whatever, that's when Uncle Joe is going to come out of the woodwork and say, well, wait a minute, Cliff, that was a loan. I was expecting to make that back. You owe me, dude. I want to see that money coming back from you. And by the way, I loaned it to you. I didn't loan it to your business. You're personally on the hook for this loan. Okay. That's the stuff that's how friends and family and friends can turn into enemies. Always get good documentation. And specifically, if someone's putting money into you, I'll tell you, and by the way, sometimes people don't intend to be jerks. Okay. Sometimes it just happens. I had a situation, one of the very first clients that I had when I went off on my own, 30 some odd years ago, was a young lady. She was opening up a retail boutique somewhere in Fairfield County. I can't remember where it was. But she had an aunt. I'm just going to call her Aunt Irma. That wasn't her real name, but she had an aunt who doted on her, who loved her. She was her favorite niece. So when this young lady went out to start her boutique, her Aunt Irma gave her $50,000 to start her business. And it was clear Aunt Irma intended this to be a gift. She wasn't expecting anything back from this at all, except, the continued love and affection of her favorite niece. Okay. But what happened? A couple of years later, Aunt Irma passed away, and the estate was taken over by an estate attorney, a person I happen to have known, and a very good estate attorney. And unfortunately, an estate attorney cannot assume that something was a gift. An estate attorney's main job is to maximize the value of the estate for the beneficiaries. They are not in a position to say, well, this was just a gift, so I'm just going to forget about that $50,000. The beneficiaries will sue him for malpractice if he does that. So he has a job to maximize. So he approached, my client. That's when I got involved, was when she called me, when this estate attorney called and said, look, I'm sorry, but I can't just treat this as a gift. I'm sure your Aunt Irma intended it that way, but I can't treat this now. Well, you decide, is this going to be a loan or is this going to be an investment that has to be paid back? You'll buy it back over time, or is this going to be an investment, where you're going to give her, the beneficiaries are going to get a piece of your business going forward. That's when she called me and got me involved. You don't ever want to have those kind of conversations with people. I mean, here's a situation. If they had just done a one-page deed of gift, then the estate attorney would have had something to hang his hat on, saying, well, wait a minute, this was absolutely a gift. This is not something that would belong to the estate, and therefore I'm going to exclude it from the estate. Then the estate attorney can do the right thing. Proper documentation always leads to the correct legal results down the road. Always get good documentation. Even if it's your closest relative, don't be afraid to get things get things in writing. The other thing you have to watch out for your neighbors, especially if you work out of your home. If you are engaged in an activity that is very loud, raucous, your house is emitting odors at night with what it is you were doing. If the kids can't play basketball on the street because they're too busy dodging cars going to and from your home office, sooner or later your neighbors are going to rat you out to the zoning authorities, and you probably will have a problem with that. I mean, there are over 15 million home offices in the United States today. Hardly any of them get into trouble with the local zoning authorities, even though they technically violate zoning law. But nobody cares about it until your neighbors rat you out. So always at least make sure that you have good relationships with your neighbors. Um, and the best way to deal with it is to find out about their home offices. And then when you see them at the annual block party, just say, look, I'll make you a deal. You don't talk about mine. I won't talk about yours. A little honor among thieves there. Okay. Number 11, old age and death. The Grim Reaper is an enemy. Sooner or later, it's tough to grow old. Tell me about it. I'm going to be hitting a big birthday next year, one of those that ends in a zero. And believe me, there's a saying, show me a 60, 70-year-old man, and I will show you a 20-year-old man saying, what the hell happened? And I'm very much in that category. I have to say, we all have to learn to live with physical, mental, and social limitations. We all think we're superhuman. We all think we're going to live forever, but it is absolutely not true. And all it takes is one bad visit to the doctor to change your whole outlook on life. So the time for plan for that is now. Planning for the golden years. What do you want to do with the last 10 years of your life? Do you want to retire? Do you want to build a legacy? There's no right answer to it, but start thinking about that. What are you going to do with those golden years? Who's going to take over your business? Who's going to run it? I have a solo law practice. I have a basement with over 5,000 client files that someone is going to have to inherit. Who is that person going to be, and how am I going to make money off of that? I mean, I have value there. Those 5,000 client files have value. How am I going to realize that value? Am I going to sell and have them give me a percentage of their sales or something? I mean, these are questions that every retiring professional has to ask themselves these days. And it's the same for you. Um, estate planning is something you should do at any, stage of your life. Don't wait till you're 65 to do it. Start thinking about who the succession is going to be, and who's going to take over, and how are they going to how are they going to pay you? I mean, do you care about making an income? You may be just so fed up you just want to hand it to someone and walk away, and that's fine. Who is that person going to be? How are you going to shut it down? How are you going to notify your clients that you're leaving, that they're not going to be there anymore? After I've been practicing law now for 43 years of my life, and my name appears on literally hundreds of corporate and LLC records around the country. I mean, it would take me a year of my life to physically go online and get rid of all those. Who's going to take those things over, and who's going to make sure that I don't get sued because of something I did 15 years ago or did not do 15 years from now, ago? How do you deal with that? What kinds of insurance is available for that kind of stuff? These are the things you have to think about. Sooner or later, you will no longer be able to physically do what you do. So, that's so give some thought to that. And now we come to the last enemy, and guess what? It's you. Have you noticed, by the way, there is sort of a logic to the way that I've organized the 12 enemies. I begin with the most obvious and I end with the least obvious. I also deal with the people that are furthest outside of your organization, and now I'm dealing with the one who is the most intimately connected with you, which is yourself. There was a cartoon strip that was popular when I was a boy called Pogo. It was a political, satirical cartoon. These were a bunch of animals who lived in a swamp somewhere, and they talked about politics and stuff like that. And one of the greatest quotes that came out of that is, we have met the enemy, and they is us. Every once in a while in your life, you wake up and you say to yourself, I wonder, am I my own worst enemy? And that's something you kind of have to live with when you do this, when we live in the entrepreneurial space. I used to talk about this. A lot of people talk about your inner child and stuff like that. I don't talk about that. But I talk about something called the inner employee. Each one of us, every human being has an inner employee. It lives inside our brain. And the purpose, and this thing is an employee. We tell it what to do. Remember I said that before? You tell your employees what to do, right? And the employee's job is to make us happy. The employee's job is to help us get what we want. out of life. It's basically a good thing, but it can turn into an enemy if you feed it the wrong information. So let's say, for example, you're walking around saying, I really hate this job. I really hate this business. I'm so sorry I did this. I want to get out of this. I'll do anything to get out of this. Your inner employee is listening to this dialogue and it's saying, oh, okay, boss isn't happy. Boss wants out. Okay. I'm going to help him. I'm going to help him get what he wants. I'm going to really screw something up. And then he'll be so embarrassed. His reputation will be totally shot and he will no longer be able to do what he does. Have you ever had a situation where you did something so stupid, even a rookie would not make that mistake? And you made it after 20, 30 years of doing whatever it is. We've all had that experience, by the way, at one point or another. What happens there psychologically is that you're telling your inner employee that you wanted that to happen, and the inner employee gave you what you wanted. Okay. So when you have to be very careful what you say to your inner employee because it's listening and it's going to do what you want it to do. Okay, that's the thing. You have to learn to get the inner employee on your side. Now, your inner employee can be your best friend too. Have you ever had a situation in your life, as we all had, I have too, where you worked on something for days and days, you couldn't find the answer, couldn't find the solution, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of taking a shower, the perfect solution comes to you, and you can solve the problem and move on with your life? Have you ever had that experience? That's your inner employee also. You've been telling it, I got to solve this problem. I mean, it's an important client. I don't want to lose this client. I want to, make them happy. I got to get the solution. And the inner employee is saying, okay, I'm going to work overtime and help him find that solution. And that's what your inner employee is doing. And by the way, when your inner employee does that, it needs to be rewarded in some way. VSOP brandy is what my inner employee prefers. Okay. Your inner employee is very important. It can be your best friend, but you don't want to make it your worst enemy. What I call Willy Loman syndrome. Every one of us probably read Death of a Salesman in high school. This is a play. I mean, you can read it on a bunch of different levels. It's a Greek a tragedy, but it's basically about a guy, a salesman, who is so caught up in his sales pitch that he believes his own BS. And he is such a good salesman that he persuades all the people around him that his vision of the world is true when in fact it isn't, when in fact his life is falling apart. But nobody sees it because he's so good at presenting the positive image of things. That's the tragedy of Willy Loman, I think. Seriously, read Death of a Salesman, and instead of salesman, call it Death of an Entrepreneur. And I will tell you, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs die because they were just too, not physically, but they lose their businesses because they get so caught up in their own BS, that they lose track of reality. That can be a problem in life. There are many ways in which your subconscious can be either a friend or an enemy. Just be aware that it's there. And it's something that you have to deal with. You don't want to end up, losing a business or getting sued because you let your inner employee, get over get over things. So those are the 12 enemies, and here are the key takeaways, for today's program. Then I'll try to answer a couple of questions. Virtually all small businesses failures can be attributed to one or more of the 12 enemies getting their way. No matter how busy you get running your business, you need to find time to deal with your enemies and develop a defensive strategy and sometimes counterattacks. George Washington once said that the best defense is a good offense. I always used to think that quote was from a football coach or a basketball coach or something. It actually comes from George Washington. The best defense is a good Washington. He said it in almost so many words. And then last but not least, in any small business, you need a good lawyer. You need allies. You need a team. You need some people and a team. You need a good lawyer, a good accountant, a good insurance person. These are your allies in your battle against enemies. Just be sure you manage them in such a way that they do not themselves become enemies. So that's the end of my prepared remarks. Here are some of the books that I've written. The Small Business Survival Guide, the one on the left, is the one that this talk is based upon. For those of you who sell on eBay and Amazon, I also have a book strictly on the tax and legal issues of selling online. I have a lot of clients in that space. We have a couple of questions and answers here, and I'm going to try to answer them as briefly as I can. I referred in one of my slides to a dynasty trust. This is a situation where you put your assets into a trust, and the trust has no defined termination. It could technically live in perpetuity. There used to be a law in estate planning. It was called the rule against perpetuities, that said that a trust cannot exist for more than the lives of the persons who were alive at the time that the trust was created, plus 21 years. Though that has been overruled in virtually all states that I'm aware of. It definitely does no longer applies in New York and Connecticut. So you can set up a trust that'll be in existence for 500 years. There are pros and cons of doing that, but that's what a dynasty trust is. It's something where you put your assets into a trust pretty much in perpetuity, and the trustees, they pass the baton from generation to generation, and they hopefully will follow your wishes.
And Cliff, we're going to have to bring it to a close. This was a
Sure.
fantastic presentation. We thank you very, very much. As Cliff has said, his material is online on YouTube. This session is being recorded and will be available on the SCORE website. Please go to the SCORE website to look for other presentations, both by Cliff and other speakers who can help you with your small business. And finally, reach out to a mentor who can give you one-on-one counseling and coaching to help you bring your business to a successful outcome. So we thank you very, very much for participating. Cliff, as always, dynamite presentation. We appreciate it. And that brings our session to a close today. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Always a pleasure to do stuff for SCORE.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.